Welcome to our true Hollywood story, The Anglo-Saxons and the Epic Beowulf. Please welcome our panel of judges and experts. This is Reen, Tala, Leanne, and Lujane. Thank you all for being here. So let's begin with an introduction of our star players, the Anglo-Saxons. According to Fletcher's A History of English Literature, and some early writing in the year 731 by a priest in a monastery called the Ecclesiastical, can someone help me out here?
No, I can't help you.
Anyone?
Tickle.
Tala, if you could please tell our viewers a little more.
Yes. The Germanic tribes were mostly made of the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes, from what is present-day Holland, Germany, and Denmark. They lived in smaller tribes across the northern and eastern borders of Europe and lived through herding and an early form of agriculture. The villages were not permanent and easily destroyed or abandoned.
I'd like to interrupt you for a minute. Before we move on, I'd like to point out that too often they took part in tribal or regional wars, so it was perhaps a good use of time to not invest too much in a village that might be overrun at any given moment. Mobility was perhaps a key of survival against a stronger, larger tribe.
Thank you, Leanne, for that insight. Lujane, if you could please tell us how the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes came to the British island.
Well, at the time of their first arrival on the coast, the Romans were in rule, and they were able to successfully stop the advancement of the invaders. So, not long after, the Romans had to withdraw their troops and return to defend their lands from Italy. Sometime in the mid-5th century, the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes returned and successfully took the lands.
What we also know is that the less numerous Jutes moved inland from the coast and no longer contributed as much to the Anglo-Saxon movement. Another thing that Fletcher says about the Anglo-Saxons is that the reintroduction of Christianity was one of the most humanizing influences. And we know that there were two main influences of how Christianity came to be.
Yes, it was the southern half of the continent that was influenced by the Roman missionaries, and the north by the Irish preachers.
In addition, they had influence in different ways. The Irish were simpler and won converts by the beauty of their lives, while the Romans came with a whole package of Christianity, architecture, music, and a learning of their culture. The Roman influence became more apparent, and this helped to link the island to the rest of the continent for the rest of the time.
Although Beowulf has originated before the settlement, its complete manuscript, as we know, is influenced by Christianity. So I think it's important that we also touch upon what an epic is and why Beowulf is classified as such.
I'd like to add that epics are long, exalted narrative poems. They're usually on a serious subject centered on a heroic figure. Epics were shaped from the legends of an age when a nation was conquering and expanding. Such is the foundation of the Anglo-Saxon Beowulf.
Interesting. So, by your definition of an epic, then, is it safe to assume that Family Guy is not an epic?
I agree.
I would have to disagree. It's a pretty epic show, especially Stewie. He's really epic.
We also notice that Beowulf is about 3,000 lines and can be divided into 3 different battles.
There's also another structure that passed on 3 funerals and 1 controversial funeral, that of the Lay of the Last Survivor.
Please don't interrupt me.
I only interrupted because you were missing some important points.
But I wasn't.
Ladies, please.
The funerals. There are 3 distinct funerals, one of them which raises controversy. See, the first one is Shield Shaving? Is that one?
Shield shaving?
Shield shaving, yes. Of course, I was just saying the Anglo-Saxon pronunciation, acclaimed scholar and whatnot. So yes, there's Shield Shaving's funeral, which is quite elaborate because he was a glorious king. And then the second is of Hildebert's kin, and is actually cremated rather than a ship burial, and that's a bit controversial as well. Now the third and most important one is of course of Beowulf. See, Beowulf, he was such a brilliant hero, and he was
buried with treasures, and they also held a monument created for him, and the lines, all such ornaments as earth in the treasure and the dragon remains were sent into the sea as a parallel to the first funeral.
Right, thank you for that mediocre addition, Dean.
Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
And the fourth controversial funeral that was mentioned is shown in lines 2247 to 2266. And the similarities are in the burying of treasure. And this is in reference to the dragon's den that is filled with the treasures. On a side note, I would like to visit also the importance of Hildebert in Beowulf and the importance of women. Leanne, if you could please tell us the structure of the battles.
Sure. So as we know, Hrothgar and his people are tortured by Grendel for 12 years. And the story of their struggles spreads and reaches Beowulf, who decided to come up and help. As depicted in the second stanza line of Grendel's achievement, heard in his home. Second battle is when Beowulf finds Grendel's mother in her lair after she had tried to avenge her son's death. And the fourth is many years later, when Beowulf is king of his land. He is forced to fight a dragon when someone steals a golden cup from his den. So, unfortunately, Beowulf is mortally wounded as described in the lines. The wound then began, which the earth-dwelling dragon erstwhile had wrought him.
Thank you, Leanne. There are also opposing viewpoints on actually the three battle structure, in that Grendel and his mother are actually a continuation of each other. Tala, would you like to explain further? In the fourth stanza, when Beowulf and the 14 warriors come to the coast, the watchman is stunned to see them, and this is clear in the lines. Who are ye, men here, mail-covered warriors, clad in your corslets, come thus a-driving? Beowulf's response, accordingly, is also very long. It's 12 lines long, and it's all about him describing his loyalty towards the king. Do you think you could explain to us why loyalty is such a big issue?
This is because loyalty is one of the most admirable characteristics one can have. There are many more explanations. For example, the self-interest to the generosity of the king. The poem, in fact, praises loyalty, and with its intention help reinforce loyalty to the kings.
Yes, but I think it's also about, it's like an example for the good citizen should be like, you're loyal to the king, and this is why the writers made it a point included in the epic. It's like telling the citizens that they should be loyal to their king, Liam?
Thank you, Tala, for your mediocre comment.
I'm sorry, but that was not mediocre.
I think it was.
I think that you're mediocre.
Excuse me?
Yes, you heard me.
Okay, let's just hold on. Hrothgar to further tell about Beowulf's incredible strength by mentioning the strength he has in his hands. That he 30 men's grapple has in his hand, the hero in battle.
Yes, Beowulf is quite a strong character, isn't he? Reminds me of myself in my youth.
So now let's move on to the Christian influences in Beowulf. We can see this throughout the poem when they make reference to God, the Creator, All-Father Mighty. If you could elaborate on that, please, little Leanne.
Yeah, sure. So most scholars think that Christian stuff in the poem are added later between the 7th and 10th century, when the poem was composed. This helps explain the fact that both Christian and pagan beliefs are represented in the poem as it was set in the pagan time, but the benefits of Christian narrators from a few centuries later.
Sorry.
When when Grendel came to attack the mead hall, or the king's hall, he couldn't touch it because it was protected by the gods. Now, referring to the poem, where it says, since God did not oppose, not the throne could he touch.
Talk about women for a second.
Oh, enough with the women.
Let's just talk about the women.
Okay, fine. The women in Beowulf. I don't think it's. Why of all there are only 3 characters that are women, and one of them is a monster. I just don't think that's fair.
It's important, you know. You have the controversy. You have the monster, and then you have the peacemaker, and you have the hostess.
Male what? I don't.
It is very masculine.
It's
You know,
very masculine.
you know the revenge thing. She comes for revenge. That's very masculine in the days. Men
She's
used to
not
go. No, she was an offering of peace.
She was an offering. She's an object. She's being objectified. They're objectifying women.
It was beautiful. They sent her. That's how it was
They
done back
sent
then.
her. She didn't volunteer to be sent.
Well, even if you were sent to be a peacemaker, don't you think that would be a beautiful thing for you to dedicate your life
I
to
think
peace?
you're an object. You just.
You can't even speak. We're done.
I'm exhausted. Okay.